that PDF to all of the attendees on today's call. So great to have you here. I'm going to pass it over to Matthew Gaston to get us started.
Excellent. Thanks, thanks, Eric, for the introduction. Hope you all are doing well out there. First topic we're going to talk about is getting a head start. And so going in a day before and making sure your core systems are ready is very important. Those core systems can be defined as your computers, server, practice management software, an intraoral camera, digital x-ray machines, printers and scanners. And also, if you or your staff took your office phones home to work remotely over the past month, ensure, if you haven't already, that they are plugged in and working. The best way to check that is to make a test call in and make a test call out. This ensures that you have two-way capabilities and that your phones are actively working. Another small suggestion while you're working your way back into the office, considering it's likely been potentially a month or greater, would be checking your machines and the apparatuses within to ensure they're clean, free of dust, and aesthetically pleasing to your patients or clients. Transitioning over, we want to also make sure that we're communicating to our vendors to make sure that they know we're coming back to work. Those vendors consist of, for our dental specific viewers, any dental supply companies, and then outside of that, waste management services, facility cleaning services, your voice over IP or your phone service provider, and then of course IT support, whether that be a company or individual. Hopefully throughout this time, you've been in contact in some capacity with your IT support in preparation for a return. We at DPC have been in contact throughout the process with our clients, providing outreach and identifying when they plan to return, so all systems are a go upon that time. An example of this, which worked out great in the office's favor recently, last week we had some offices go back in and to test everything and ensure that there were no hiccups upon returning. We were in contact with them throughout the day as we were able to identify and fix some minor issues that they were having, giving them the peace of mind that they could focus on the more important parts of their practice, which would be their patients or clients. And now want to talk a little bit more openly about the social aspects. So one thing that may get overlooked, but that's very, very popular at the moment, and that is updating your social media to let your patients or clients know that you're open or when you plan on opening. Those social platforms includes places like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. And so this is an opportunity for you to promote the measures you've taken to reopen safely. The simple items are days and hours of operation, protocols for entering the office. If you're dental specific, it could be such as temperature checks, no waiting in the lobby, X number of patients in the office at one time. And then also any items or measures you've taken to minimize contact between parties, such as plexiglass installations, extra PPE equipment. And one thing on that note that we've been seeing a lot of success with are offices posting videos on social media showing or illustrating those changes. If you have the time and bandwidth, we'd suggest creating a few and sharing. They're great opportunities to reach the different masses. And in any event, either communication style will help strengthen your patient and client trust and credibility amongst your current patients and then any new patients that you may have. One of the things there that's listed on the screen with regard to is the Google listing. So in that landing page, most of us can admit when you go to search for something, the first place you go is Google. So it's very popular, and now it's more important than ever that your Google listing is up to date with accurate information. And that accurate information you should be verifying are items like the updated days and hours that you're going to be open moving forward. And also ensure that there is no label at the bottom of your screen that or website that may list temporarily closed. The other things to note: physical address of the office and the phone number, ensure that those are correct. This is a good way to scrub or audit those items. And lastly, the email address for the practice and or a link to the office's official website. Just make sure that those are up to date and accurate. And so those are some simple steps with regard to the Google listing. Now I'm going to pass it along to Eric, who will be sharing some housekeeping tips on IT.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, so IT housekeeping tips. There are a ton of these tips that will pop up as the transition occurs, but we wanted to focus on these three main ones as the most common ones that we hear. So be sure to correctly connect all the electronics that you may have taken home and plugging them back into the office. Many clients we work with needed to take home computers to work on and peripherals like the monitors and the keyboards. Be sure to take inventory of where things were placed, how they were connected to each other, and set it up in the easiest way possible, the easiest fashion. One of the biggest lifesavers throughout the pandemic has been the VoIP phone system. And VoIP is not only a reliable phone system within the office, but it allowed all of those who have it to physically take home their phone and receive and make calls to clients or patients from the actual office phone number itself. It is extremely easy to plug and go, and it keeps productivity high in rescheduling appointments or notifying individuals of office updates. Should you have any questions as it pertains to moving equipment, be sure to reach out to a professional so it will get done correctly, as well as in a timely fashion. Transitioning over to number 2 here, test your phone number, your voicemail, recording, and call routing. Matthew had gone over this a little bit, but to emphasize, the phone is such a necessity within our office. It would be very frustrating if it wasn't to work for an undesired amount of time. So updating our voicemail is a simple overlooked blessing that can really help get the message across of office rules. So for example, please stay in your car and we will call you upon wanting you to come into the physical office, or we have changed our hours of operation. Just last week, I had an appointment on the other side of town about 30 minutes away, and I had figured my 4 o'clock appointment was still on, it was still scheduled because 1, their Google listing said it was, and 2, they hadn't updated their voicemail. So me as a customer for them, I had assumed that my meeting was still going to be taking place. Very frustrated when I showed up and found out that their hours were changed from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. because they printed it on a door and just put it up with a piece of tape. So needless to say, I had gone to someone closer who was more interactive with their patients. So living within 2020 in the 21st century, utilizing the technology and the platforms we have are very helpful. And then last that we have on here is auditing the remote access that was given to individuals to work from home. So removing the permissions that were given to them and making sure they're no longer in place. A lack of auditing these remote accesses can create substantial security issues. What ends up happening is if an individual still has access, and let's say they're terminated from their role, they are ultimately going to have complete access of your network and everything within it until you were to remove that permission. So if it's something that we just skip over or we forget, we want to ensure that if we had given permission to, let's say, 8 team members in the office, we are removing the access permissions from 8 team members in the office. You can always reach out again to an IT professional to make sure this is getting done correctly, because you wouldn't want any type of liability lingering. So with that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Clay Archer.
Yeah, I want to kind of just reiterate that last one that Eric went over there. In the grand scheme of cybersecurity, and we kind of beat everybody over the head over cybersecurity and being hacked or getting crypto wall. One of the biggest vulnerabilities there is not auditing user accounts. So I can't overstate how important it is if you did get remote access for any of your employees or yourself over this time frame that was temporary and it wasn't something you wanted to do long term. make sure you get with your IT provider and have those removed. What happens over time is those credentials get out there on the internet. People will hack Target, or they'll hack, whatever the Chase or whatever the company is, and they will realize the credentials that people use, and they will try those on those unarchived accounts. And so if they just sit there for 3, 4, 5, 6 years and they're never turned off, they are just glaring holes in the security. And probably 50% of the attacks come through those unaudited user accounts. So if you did open it up, it's great to use those, and I'm not trying to stop anybody from using those remote access options that we provide, or that your IT provider provided. But it's just, you have to clean house and make sure you terminate those rules, because if they're just forgotten, like Eric says, an ex-employee can come right in, or the bad guy can come back in with that ex-employee's credentials. So on to some of the more kind of team centric behaviors that we see kind of the best in class using. First and foremost, all these are going to be centered around communication, but having a staff meeting, whether that's virtual or like Matthew mentioned in his first slide, to go in the day before. Maybe you go in the day before you're going to open, and you have the team come with you, and you guys do it in person. But the point of it is to really over communicate to your staff right now. These trying times are perfect times to really solidify your role as the leader of the team, and to make everybody feel safe and secure and comfortable. I know most of you probably are on the Facebook groups that we are all in, and you see the amount of anxiety and trepidation that a lot of staff members are having about coming back to work. Obviously, there's been a lot of press about the dangers of aerosol and aerosols in the dental practice, and that the dental practice is the most dangerous place, work environment. Whether that's true or not true is not really the point. The point is that your team has anxiety, your team has questions, your team needs a safe environment for you to lead them through this time frame. In discussing what your plan is, what your hours of operation are going to be, what your PPE plan, too many PPPs going on right now, your PPE plans are, what your plans are for, unemployment and the PPP. Well, these are all great things to sit down and have a staff meeting about. And I think that there's never been a better time to have an all staff meeting and go over ad nauseum with your staff. The other thing, and it will be in another part here as well, is you need to give your staff an avenue to speak with you directly about their anxieties and their questions, and don't be offended. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of questions, and some that you may not have the answers to, but being able to have an avenue for them to express that to you. Some of them are going to be want to do it in a more private setting and a less dramatic setting, and being able to give them an avenue to express themselves to you is recommended. So one other thing, and you'll see it here at DPC, we are not going back to here in the office. Marty and I have stayed in the office the whole time. Many of you have been to our office, but for you that haven't been here before, we have a very large office, and Marty's very, very far away from me, and it's a very safe place for us to be. Some of the technicians will come in and grab some stuff off the shelves or some tools that they need, but for the most part, we don't see a huge need to have the whole admin team and the support team come back into our office. And whether you're a dentist or a professional of other sorts, there are going to be specific rules in your practices that do not require people to be there. And thinking outside of the box, maybe you don't bring everybody back in if they're not necessary. Also, some offices are going to have reduced hours. Some offices are going to have more at-risk members of the team. We have Jennifer, who you guys may know if you've ever called in to buy anything from us. She's the inside sales representative, and she is pregnant. And so we are not going to have Jennifer back until after she has her baby, just because that role, she's able to do it from afar, and it makes sense because the apprehension and anxiety about her having a higher risk of complications. So those are just a couple of things to consider there on the team. On to the next slide. Well, another thing that we really want to be over communicative about, and I think that's probably the theme for my slides, is communication, is the new infection control policies. So, obviously we're having some issues with getting PPE, and the ADA has given us guidelines that we are going to follow, but every office is going to have a little bit different policy in recording those policies, communicating those policies, depending upon where you guys are recording that information. Obviously, first and foremost, communicating it to your team members, communicating it to your patients are important, but also documenting those. Linda Harvey and Debbie Carr probably would have more detailed information about exact ways that they want you to store that information. But having the policies down, if you have them in electronic form for some of the bigger offices, making sure that those are updated on your intranet and in your employee handbooks, just so that you've got it documented. Obviously, there is going to be some risk of exposure, and if there is exposure, having that policy written and having it match the ADI guidelines is probably in everybody's best whatever. So anyways, also consult local regulations before reopening. Obviously, a lot of that has evolved in the last I guess 72 hours. So some of our offices opened yesterday, which was pretty interesting. Most of our offices that opened yesterday did it as a trial run, and things went really well. As far as I know, we did have a pretty big uptick in tickets yesterday. I would probably venture to say about 10 to 20% of our clients saw patients yesterday. The bigger, obviously, the bigger day is going to be the 11th. May 8th was kind of everybody's go-to date, and so it seems like that May 11th is going to be the big date. And as Matthew alluded to, letting everybody know that that's going to be the day you open will help everybody kind of scale up and make sure that they've got everything that you need for that day. I think you're going to see a lot of the people that have not started yet, or that did not start yesterday. You will see that the people that start next week will probably do a little bit of what the people did yesterday. We had some people do a full day yesterday. We had some people do a day yesterday and then off today and then on tomorrow. Obviously, everybody's going to have a different patient load and figure out exactly how it's going to be. But that's really up for you to make that decision as the business owner. But obviously you want to make sure that you are really dialed into the FDA and local government to make sure that what you're doing is appropriate for the region that you're in. I mean, obviously, for the most part, our clients are in Central, North, and North Florida and South Georgia. And so there are a little bit difference in regulations between the Florida and Georgia clients. But for the most part, it seems like Central and North Florida have been kind of on the same path. In South Florida, obviously, things are a little bit different. So make sure that we're still dialed into it. The fact that we're going back definitely does not mean that this is over. And obviously, we want to be on our best behavior to make sure that we all can keep going and working in whatever capacity is appropriate without being shut down again. So I really I encourage everybody to follow the rules. Obviously, our clients are tip of the spear. You guys are, top 10% of the dentists. And I know that you guys are doing the right things, but we want to make sure that we're not the ones that are going to be on the news with some kind of crazy disregard of the appropriate procedures that were being given. And I have one other thing that I want to throw out to everybody that's on this call. I've made when I say I've made with the help of a lot of friends, a PPP reimbursement spreadsheet. And basically what that is it's you're able to put in your payroll and your beginning head count, your end head count, when you receive the PPE funds, when the 8 weeks is up, and you'll be able to put in all your expenses for rent and utilities and your expenses for compensation to your employees, the eligible compensation, and you'll be able to see what your what is eligible for reimbursement or forgiveness on that loan. So it's a nice way to be able to forecast where you are on the loan repayment, what your liability to the loan part of that might be, and what may be changing your employment and employee level during that time frame may be. So if you were maybe down some headcount at the beginning to where you were last year, maybe it makes sense to hire somebody, and you'll be able to see that in and how that all affects. So it's a nice little spreadsheet. I will send it out to everybody that's registered for the call. It doesn't have anything to do necessarily about going back, but I know there is still a lot of apprehension about the PPP and the repayment of the PPP. Obviously we're taking every little wave as it comes. This has been a really good positive wave that we're coming back here to actually see patients, but there will be the next phase will be us all scrambling to figure out what are we doing about the PPE repayment portion, or the forgiveness portion for that matter. So I think that's all I have for now. Do we have any questions there?
We do, yeah, we do have a few questions. So one of the first questions was, with your office physically being closed for 6 to 8 weeks, what are the common IT problems or hurdles that may pop up when going back into an office that has not been theoretically turned on for 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, fortunately, we're in Florida, so we get this. Not everybody in Florida does, but we typically do every year have some portion of our client base that's affected with a hurricane. And it's honestly, it's a little bit of everything. You saw Matthew kind of throw out a list of things. It can be everything. I mean, obviously, first things first, you just want to turn on the server, turn on your front desk workstations, and see if you can get into your Open Dental or EagleSoft or Dentrix or whatever you're using for your practice management. I mean, obviously, if you've got your practice management system on and you got air suction and water, you probably can see patients. So that's kind of the base one of like, okay, we're good to go. Then I would probably, if you're going to do that staff meeting, I would have everybody just go to their rooms. Obviously, the hygienists are going to want to run some water through everything and do their regular just kind of onboarding of the physical property, plant, and equipment. But I would say for them, I would have everybody take an x-ray. If you've got a pen or a CT machine, fire up a CT. If you've got time in a staff meeting / onboarding day, fire up an intraoral camera like Matthew said. All those things, just being able to come in that next Monday or the next day and be able to go just great guns without having to worry about any of that stuff. I mean, even beyond that, if the front desk is there, I mean, I'm throwing out a lot of stuff, the stuff that we check when we do an install of a computer. It's going to be, can I print? You have your front desk people just print something, scan something. But as long as you can get into those major things, you're gonna be okay. But when you're down that long, things do not, there will be some things that are a hiccup. And we're here. So on that day that you have that staff meeting and do the dry run, feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call, and we'll log in and, check your claim software or whatever it is that doesn't work correctly. Typically an APC here or there doesn't like it, that has been off for 6 months, so you'll get the beeping battery backup thing. But for the most part, it's just everything. It's going to be like everything else. Not that you guys are using Cavitrons, but you want to fire those things up and run some water through them and do all the same thing. And the computers are no different. It's just they haven't been used for a while and just kick the tires.
Yeah, one thing to that note, and I know Matthew had talked about it going into the office a day early. A lot of professional IT companies will have their clients on a cycle of resetting their passwords. We ran into that cycle the other day on May 1st. So a lot of us had spent 30 to 40 minutes resetting all of our passwords on all of our sites. So little things like that are going to pop up. And that's why it's good to go in a day early and just be prepared for things like that, because it would really stink to be there at 8 a.m., doors open, and now we have to go around to every workstation or every computer in the office space and reset the passwords. So minor things like that will add up to being beneficial to go in a day early. One question that we had for Matthew pertaining to Google was, how do you update your Google listing? And in specific, who would you reach out to do something like that?
I might know that answer because it's a little bit of a trick question. It's a little bit of a difficult one because there's multiple answers there. You should know who that person is, but you might not if somebody did your website for you. If somebody did your website, they might have registered that for you. If they did and you do not know who that person is, you can reach out to Google. What Google will do is they're going to make you verify that you are actually that person, and they do that by sending you a postcard that you then have to send back to them, or you don't send back to them. You take that postcard, it has a code on it, and you can then claim that site. So if you're totally lost, you have to reach out to Google. They'll let you claim it. If you know who did your web page, just reach out to them because they probably are in control over it. Sometimes you might want to take that control back if you want to start doing a little bit more with your Google reviews and stuff. It's nice to have control over that. If we did your website, we don't do websites anymore, but we did back in the day. And so there's probably 20 or 30 people's domains that we still host or have some responsibility to. If we're that person, just reach out to us, and Christy will give you that information. But if you did your own webpage, then it's just on your Google account. So if you log into your Google, if you go into Chrome and log into your Chrome account, or go to Gmail and log into your Gmail account, and then go to your Google Place, it should let you be the administrator of that.
Okay. One other question that we had was, so someone had expressed that they did a full close. So they had called all of the patients and then were fully closed for 6 weeks. Now, transitioning back into that, one of our points was you may not have the whole staff coming into the office physically. So how can one set up something like a Screen Connect so that they could have some admin workers make calls from home and things like that? How do you go about setting something like that up?
Yeah, so that really depends on if you're our client. Just call us and we'll just set that up for you. That's relatively easy. We've been doing that throughout the pandemic, and we've been doing it this week in particular a little bit more as people are doing kind of the caller. I would go another step further. If you are our client and you have complete voice or weave, I would also reach out to us and see if we can help you get your office phones to the house. Even if it's just for a couple of days, that really kind of ups the efficiency of doing phone calls when you actually have the handset that you normally use. And if you have a headset, you can use your normal headset as well. I find that staff are a lot quicker and faster at dialing if they've got the real equipment to do it. The simple fact of it is you just got to get in there and just call them. What was exactly the question again, Eric? I want to make sure I answered that correctly.
Yeah, so since their office was fully closed, they do want to have a slow rollout and have some of the admin staff work from home, but they don't have the capability to set up Screen Connect, or they're not familiar with it?
Gotcha. Yeah. So if you're not a client and you don't have Screen Connect, there are other products that work well. The only caveat I give to anybody on those is it's back to what I said on the slide, and I followed up what Eric said on his slide. Remote access is it's a dangerous thing if it's not done correctly. So just because you're giving the outside world access to, what inevitably for the bad guys is, 3,000, 10,000, 50,000 IDs with, credit card information, all their family information. So what's their mom's maiden name? It's in there. What's their drug prescriptions? It's in there. The data inside of your databases is very, very valuable. So there are other products that you could use. LogMeIn is one that comes to mind. But I really caution people to use those things without the consulting an IT provider of some sort. If you have an IT provider, I would reach out to them, and whatever they recommend, I would say use that. Really, at the end of the day, good stewardship of those accounts is what's super important. So if you do roll out something like LogMeIn without the help of an IT provider, my biggest words of advice for you would be to make sure that you terminate those accounts individually, close those accounts out when those people quit using it, and don't leave those open indefinitely. The ones that we end up biting people and that kind of stuff is when you go, oh, you know what, my office manager's been with me for 15 years. He's going to be with me for forever. I'm just going to leave access for him. And you just set that and you forget that. And then, life happens. And in 5 years, he and his wife moved to Maine and you forget about it. And then in 7 years, some bad guy hacks into that account and steals all your stuff. So a long answer there. But the short of it is ask your IT person first. If you don't have an IT person, I would check out something like LogMeIn, but be very cautious.
Great. And then the last question we had was, maybe not being able to speak for all IT providers, but maybe DPC in particular, is there certain precautions or additional things that DPC has put into place if an employee is to go into an office in person to help assist with something?
Yeah, so we have our own policies here, but we're yielding to your policies as well. So we're going to be no different than the labs or other people that come in and do work that have to come in contact with your staff. So if you have particular, like Eric was saying, waiting in the parking lot before you come in, having your temperature taken, any survey you're having that you're giving your patients, we're going to yield to those protocols that you guys have for on-site people. So if you want to have all those things met, certainly that's our goal, is that we're complying with your regulations. Here we're using masks. We don't have the same access to PPP that you guys do. You guys have more layers of equipment and stuff. So I'm assuming that you guys are going to be at a higher standard of care than we are able to obtain just because of your access to PPP or PPE. But anyways, yeah, we are yielding to your policies at this point. Gotcha. So and as well, if you don't want us to come on site, certainly just let us know. I mean, we do have the ability to do 90% of the stuff that we do nowadays over the internet, and obviously we're leveraging that as much as we can.
Cool. We have a couple of finishing slides here, so be sure to connect with us on our social media platforms. Even prior to the pandemic, our marketing coordinator, Jessica, has been doing a superb job sharing a lot of pertinent content as it pertains to IT tips, different regulations, updates, etc. So here's where you can find us on the social media platforms, as well as this webinar is subsequent to one we did in earlier April titled How to Keep Your Dental Practice Afloat During the COVID-19 Pandemic. So we had put that video up on YouTube. Similarly, we are going to put this one up on YouTube. So be sure to follow those, because we do want to have more of a presence with these videos on YouTube. We've gotten tremendous feedback. So that is the plan moving forward. And with that, we will wrap up the webinar a few minutes early. Thank you so much for your time. Please be safe in returning back to the office, and you always know who you can reach out to if you need some assistance in the IT department. With that, we will say bye-bye to everyone.
Have a good one, everybody. Be safe.
Take care. Be safe.